Barb?
I'd like to nominate Julie Bissett.
Dave?
I'd like to nominate Mark Bouvier.
Anyone else?
Who was doing the co-sharing last year?
Currently, it's myself and Valley.
Body.
All right,
Is it appropriate to, since there are three
Yep.
candidates for this one? is it
give
appropriate
everyone
to give
a chance to
say
speak. So-
aye? And
Or do we wanted to give everyone a chance to state their qualifications?
Yep.
And their interests? So Mark?
Well, there's an old saying, I can stand to be recognized or sit down and be appreciated. I'm a retired school business manager with about 40 years in business. My most recent position was retiring as Hannaford Career Center business manager. Local, born and raised in this community, shy of a few years away at college. Served my community 53rd year in the fire department and currently in my third term, I don't know, as a lister for the town of Bristol. So that's who I'm in. And you might see me occasionally on the sidelines with a camera in my hand. That's another thing I give back to the town.
Julie?
I'm Julie Bissett. I am currently the treasurer for the town of New Haven. I also am a former MAUSD employee, and so I understand the process of the financial process of MAUSD. Yeah, that's about it. I do have children here. I have 4. I'm populating the school for you all.
I'll step away from this role. I'll say I'm Chris Pearsall. I'm one of the current co-treasurers. I've been doing this since last January. I work here in town. I've had 2 boys that have graduated from Mount Abe. I'm a former school board member, football mom, wrestling mom, saw me in the snack shack running stuff for football. I'm also a financial advisor. I've run a small office before, so I'm pretty familiar with the way everything works. So how do I don't think we've had to do this before. So, do we just raise hands? Do we send a hat around where everybody can write their name down?
Ask for a secret ballot, please.
Do we do secret ballots?
Can be done.
Okay.
Liz has some.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds good. But I also was wondering, so in the case that we have, because you have a backup now and it's the backup person not. So like people that are willing to like step up and take the time to volunteer in this way, if or to do this work. I assume that would also be interested in if somebody isn't elected the primary person, would you be interested in supporting the person when they can't be there that week? But
Being the backup.
yeah, I guess I'm just wondering if the candidates is interested in supporting each other in that, if that were the case.
Sure. Mark and Julie, would you be amenable to being the backup if you're not elected? Okay, so would I.
You would too?
Yep.
Thank you.
We're preparing the secret ballots, just a moment.
Making a ballot is not very secret. It's quite obvious.
It's wonderful to have 3 people and such great
Yeah.
backgrounds, all very interested in the
Yeah.
position.
Maybe while those ballots are being,
And we do.
there's another action to determine salaries for all these positions. The way we have been doing the treasurer with the co-treasurers, and it's how we did it when the sort of backup treasurers were appointed. We sort of take the treasurer fee and divide that over the whole year. And so whoever comes in that week to do the work gets that week's sort of per diem, if you will. So it kind of balances out compensation. So even for backups, it can work that way, if folks are agreeable to that.
So
Something else. They got this orange meeting and there's 20 feet.
So are we just voting, putting one name down, and so first is the person who gets the spot and second is the backup?
Well, we're not elected.
You're only electing one.
No, I know, I'm just.
But whoever comes
Point
in
of
second with the
clarification.
number of votes, so the one with the most votes gets the position, the one with the second most votes gets the backup?
No, the way the statute was, it was the one who gets the most votes is the treasurer appoints backups.
Okay.
So there must be someone they feel comfortable delegating.
Right, because they ultimately hold the responsibility even though they don't.
You said I don't get to vote either.
You do get to vote.
Okay.
I don't, but you don't.
Can we list the candidates again, just so everybody knows?
Julie Bissett, there you go, Chris Pearsall, or Mark Bouvier.
Thank you. Do we need to collect and count as a non-voting person?
You were.
She technically can vote. I can't. As a non-voter.
I'll get. Thank you. Little shape for town meeting, you know?
Jennifer, did you vote? We'll go now.
Has everyone voted out there?
I think just.
Jennifer's just coming in.
Yep. Everybody's good here?
Floyd, are you voting as well?
I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Last call. Jennifer, are you gonna keep track as I count them off? Ready? Julie Bissett. Angie. Chris Pearsall. Mark Bouvier. Mark Bouvier. Mark Bouvier. Julie Bissett. Mark Bouvier. Julie Bissett. Julie Bissett. Chris Pearsall. Mark Bouvier. Chris Pearsall. Mark Bouvier. Chris Pearsall. Chris Pearsall. Mark Bouvier. Chris Pearsall.
Got it.
That was it.
Mark Bouvier.
Right? Mark, July 1st.
Effective, I think it says, is it July 1st? Does it read in here? July 1st, yep.
July 1st. Yep.
Assume Office July 1, 2026. Yep.
So do you need a motion to elect him?
Yeah.
All right, so do we have a motion to elect Mark Bouvier as treasurer?
So.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Do you have a question, Dave?
I think the vote determined that.
Yeah,
I think
right.
the
Yeah.
motion is, so pointless.
All right. So. The Article 4 is to establish the salaries for the elected officers of the district. Do we have a motion to bring that to the floor? Article 4?
So move.
Second.
And I could offer some context there. So, so the positions are moderator, clerk, and treasurer. Currently, the salary for moderator is $50 per meeting, and typically there's just one meeting, which is the annual meeting. Currently, the compensation for the clerk is $1,200. And the compensation for the treasurer is $7,200. This is also when salaries for board positions are determined. So currently, the board chair receives $2,400, vice chair $1,800, and each trustee $1,200. So that's the current status of salaries.
Anyone have questions?
I move those salaries.
Okay. Anyone have any questions or want to second that?
Second.
Barb. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any not in favor? Any abstentions? All right. So Article 6. Oh, nope, Article 5. To authorize the district board of directors to borrow money by the issuance of bonds or notes not in excess of anticipated revenues for the fiscal year 2026-2027 per 16 VSA
What?
562.9. Do we have a motion to bring Article 5 to the floor?
So moved.
Mark?
Second, or just,
All right. Any questions?
I can give just a little bit of context here. So this positions us to manage our cash flow. So as we're waiting for tax revenues or whatever sources of funds that are coming in, we have bills obviously that we need to be paying. So this positions us to be able to, in the event we need to borrow money, to do so. Generally speaking, Floyd can get into the details of this, but what we gain on the money that we have in the bank is greater than the interest we pay on the loan, so it's actually a revenue source for us through the use of this borrowing. Again, happy to get deeper into that, but this basically just helps us manage our cash flow, and it's a revenue source in a way as well.
Questions? Online, no questions. All right. So then, I'm sorry?
I move question.
I was just looking, so we brought it to the floor. We don't need, do we need to,
So she just moved the question, so now
Okay.
if it's seconded, then we're ready for
is there a
discussion.
second? Okay,
Snow coming through late morning, afternoon, possibly still around in the evening hours. So, and soon as.
any further discussion? And then all in favor? Any? Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay. All right. So.
I have a question.
Sure.
Does
ahead,
this meeting require a specific number of voters? I mean, there's not even 22 people here.
It does not
And
have a minimum required.
What's that?
It does not have a minimum number of voters required.
Okay, because there's really only, 5 or 6 voters that could vote, and those on Zoom can't do anything, like myself.
That's correct. If you wanted to be able to vote from the floor, you need to be here.
Actually, that was on the flyer as well. It was clear you didn't have the ability to vote if you were on the Zoom call.
Any other questions? Okay. So, Article 6, or did we pass that, right? Yeah, okay, Article 6. To hear and act upon the reports of the school district directors and officers. Do we?
So moved, and I'd like to speak on this article.
Okay, we need a second.
Second.
Go ahead, Dave.
So, I've been doing a little bit of research recently. And I've learned that, Moncton, Elementary School and the Robinson Elementary School score the highest in our district on proficiency. They're both doing very well, compared to state and national, metrics. Bristol, on the other hand, is not. And I hear a lot of discussion about closing schools. And it seems to me that it's time for a resolution that we will not close the Robinson School for a period of 5 years. I know that's not appropriate at this moment. I plan to make that resolution under the article that allows for such actions. Robinson School, furthermore, I would say, this board made an effort to close the Robinson School and the Lincoln School some time ago. And the result of that was Lincoln leaving the district, which some applauded because they're expensive. I think it was a mistake to shrink our district and to turn one of our towns in our 5-town area into a voucher town. Now, considering the fact that Mount Abe's proficiency level is around 34%, according to the document I read, I would suspect that Lincoln parents are going to continue to migrate to Middlebury and CVU because we're not doing well here in terms of the proficiency of our students. We spend an awful lot of money on a wonderful renovation for the front. But I don't see any mention in these documents about how we're doing about the proficiency of the students. Seems to me that ought to be a focus. We ought to be reporting on that. And we ought to be working, instead of on beautifying our building, we ought to be working more on the proficiency of our students. Who knows what the state's gonna do with regard to districts? Right now, it looks like Addison County might be a single district. And who knows what that board of that single district might do with regard to closing schools. But it might be the school with the lowest level of proficiency. In which case that would endanger our high school here in Bristol. There is much work to be done. Mostly about the proficiency of students at the high school, not the closing of elementary schools. If you want to blow up the district, then pursue that. Because the last time that this board tried to close elementary schools, Starksboro had one of their largest community meetings in the last decade. Or maybe 2 decades, because I've been to a bunch of them. And the people in that meeting voted overwhelmingly, if not unanimously, to leave the district. Except for the fact that New Haven wouldn't let them leave. If you want to blow up the district, continue on that path. Well, there may be educational or financial or other reasons to consider closing Robinson School. You are elected by the public. It's a political decision you make in terms of what schools to close. If your political decision wants to be to blow up the district and push Starksboro out of the district, keep it up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you, David. I'm gonna disagree with one point David made. I sat in Floyd's chair for a lot of years. you let your buildings deteriorate and then it's catch up. And then you're woefully behind. I worked in a district where in 5 years, they replaced one buses when I built, we put 20 buses on in a day. And the year after I left, they said, we are so far behind in bus replacement that they outsourced the business. So, kudos that the board also looks at the maintenance of a building. That you continue to just let it slide and say, well, you know, put it into other areas. You have a process, it's called negotiations. David knows what, David and I used to come together on union issues and districts that we worked together in. And so there is a process. When the teachers and the board agrees on a salary index, that becomes the agreed upon, and that dictates the salaries that we pay and the benefits that we pay. If you let this building and any other building in the school district fall behind, and then the trying to catch up with that is very, very difficult. So I speak from experience. You may disagree. Well, thank you, David.
Anyone else? Barb?
To stand up. So I just want to applaud you for all the work that you have done towards trying to figure out this terrible, terrible situation. I don't think it's appropriate for us to pit schools against each other, or for us to decide that we can keep or eliminate any one school for any length of time, considering that the state is in the mix of who knows what. So I think that you're really trying hard to figure this out. The financial considerations are huge. And people love their small schools and nobody wants to see it divided, but there's gotta be a financial solution somewhere in the mix. So I just keep up the work.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'd like for us to be mindful of the fact that we're in a school building and refrain from using language such as blow up or violent things that we might not want our students to see and repeat in buildings such as this.
Anyone else? Nothing to vote on, right?
Yes, Alan Quitner.
Go ahead, Alan.
Well, and I've said this before, I think the district and I don't think the state is looking at other possibilities close to this district where students won't have to travel on the bus and the towns won't lose their school. Does not seem to be any help in that area. And what I mean is the state could do better in setting out spreadsheets to surrounding districts beyond Addison, for example, Huntington, and maybe even Heinsberg, to look at, yes, I know there is some thought been given, but I don't think it was taken seriously, that if there's a classroom, even in Huntington, that has 6 kids, and Starksboro has a 4th grade with also a low student enrollment, it doesn't seem like they looked at this for not an immediate fix, but maybe not long term. So as far as I'm concerned, we're not really doing much. And for example, Robinson, if there are 2 classrooms not being used, they could be blocked off and rented to a low profile business. So I'm really a little upset with the state and upset with the district for not looking at other avenues. And the most important thing is students come to school with so many issues. Evidently, it's quite obvious in this district where we have a high number of infractions that I don't understand. So we can do better to look. Thank you.
You? Anyone else? Okay,
I'd like to go. I'm sorry, I was taking it off mute. Dave Rousseau here at Starksboro.
go ahead.
Yeah, so my idea would be that we live right on the north side, that we're right on the border, pretty close here to, it's closer for us to drive to CVU than it would be to go all the way to Mount A. My kids currently go to Mount A Middle School. They did go to Robinson, and that was great. It was a mile down the road. The bus ride was like 2 minutes. But if they are looking at closing Robinson, or maybe look at redrawing the district lines for those who are on the fringes of it to help keep them from having those long bus rides, they could go to CVU, they could go to Middlebury, they could go somewhere rather than having to take some of those really long rides that probably wouldn't happen to happen. So just an idea.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Moving on to Article 7, to discuss article to be voted upon by Australian ballot. Article 10. Or no?
Yeah, this is, I think, where we'll talk about the budget that's there to
Okay.
be voted on.
Pass it over to you then.
I think I pass it over to Mike.
Okay.
Well, give me just a second though to be able to share screen. We do need to bring.
Okay. So we need a motion to bring this Article 7 to the floor. Meredith is first. Do we have a second?
For discussion,
For
for discussion.
discussion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Second.
Good. All the formatting works going from PowerPoint to slide, PowerPoint to slides, but I think it should. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, so the plan is for me to kind of give a little bit of an overview of the budget that's proposed that we'll be voting on as communities in March. And the idea here is to sort of take the flyer, which I hope everybody received, and kind of give some overview and try to give some perspective of how we got to there, and what this budget aspires to accomplish. And I'll try and be quick, and then we'll have some space for questions. I'm happy if people want to raise questions along the way as well. So stop me if there's something worth chatting about. So as is tradition now, a couple of years in a row for me, I start with some AI image that's getting much better, it turns out. Though I do have some concerns in that AI could make any image it wants, and it somehow made all the men bald in the audience. You can't even win in the world of AI. But that aside, I do actually,
Right here.
like, it could have been anything, right? But that aside, I think this actually does a really good job of capturing this moment, right? Which is a really challenging moment. I love this idea of old pressures and new something else, and new challenges, I think is what it said. New intensity, yeah. This idea that right now we're really at this crossroads where we're trying to balance robust educational and social emotional support with some really challenging community tax impacts, right? And how do we come up with a budget that sort of satisfies both of those at times competing challenges? And we're trying to do this, as the slide alludes to, in this really uncertain time, right? Uncertainty at the level of the federal government, uncertainty at the level of Montpelier. And so trying to walk that line of continuing to develop budgets that support our students and that our taxpayers find acceptable with the backdrop of uncertainty about what's happening at the state and federal level. So what we as a board have tried to do is walk that tightrope or balance that, I guess we can mix metaphors here as well. And try to come up with a proposed budget that maintains the approaches that we took in this fiscal year that were already approved by our communities. Right, so we have a similar approach in terms of allocation, and we'll see where that comes from as FY 26. One of the ways in which we as a board have attempted to mitigate the community tax impact is you'll see that some of the tax impact is lessened because we're going to propose using reserve and unspent funds to lessen that burden. And I think the third point is an important one in that it provides the district with time to thoughtfully adapt to the changing educational landscape. And I really think this last little parentheses phrase is important, which is whatever those changes may be. I think it's worth pointing out, given comments on Front Porch Forum and even tonight, that we as a board have not elected a path forward, right? All we've done at this point is establish the possibility of 3 separate options that we continue to explore. And I think as we'll see, we're running into some challenges in that it's really difficult in the status quo, balancing the educational support, social emotional support, and the tax impacts. And so we're at a really important moment to try to think about that. And I think FY 27 budget allows us to have some time and space to continue those conversations. Thank you, Patrick. So how did we come up with this FY 27 budget? We really started with our FY 26 budget, if we did one more. This is a nice breakdown, I think, of the monies that were approved by our electorate last year. I do think it's worth pointing out that, and if you were around for this presentation last year or the conversation last year, that the board made significant steps to actually reduce the budget from even the year previous. So it's a $500,000 reduction from FY 25 to get us at a top line educational expenses of just a little under $35 million. Again, this sort of visualization shows you in broad categories where those monies are spent, ideally in support of educational and support for students in that mission, right? You can see our top categories are really our wonderful teachers and our wonderful staff, and then you can see the rest as it comes from there. So we started with that budget. Patrick, we go to the next. We'll do these all at once, that's fine. Then we took a few steps, right? 1A was we as a school board set a preliminary target for the administration, right? A goal in terms of how much additional spending with an idea of trying to minimize some tax impacts. The administration then went back and factored in new expenses, inflationary costs, changes in anticipated revenues. Some of the key drivers for FY 27 that I think are worth mentioning, we do have negotiated salary increases for both teachers and staff. These come about from lengthy processes, both the union and the board, to try to come up with something that's agreeable, that supports our teachers, and again, is done so at a cost that's acceptable for our taxpayers. Ultimately, this is going to keep compensation in line with nearby districts for our teachers and staff. We are dealing with, again, widespread increases in healthcare premiums, so a 7.3% increase year over year. Anyone who's been to the grocery store knows that costs of goods and services are rising as well. So we have to factor that into the FY 27 projections. And I think it's worth pointing out that given the uncertainty at the federal level, we as a district were advised to budget with the anticipation that not all of the federal monies that we would typically expect would be there. Sort of protect against that possibility, and this budget takes that into account as well. Following that sort of sense of where costs might increase or revenues might decrease, the administration went through a line-by-line review of the spending budget relative to FY 26. And really here they were trying to align the proposed budget of FY 26 with the actual spending of FY 26, really kind of making sure that what we're spending actually is reflected in what we thought we would spend. I think the benefit of that is that this reduced the overall budget that's being proposed in FY 27. But I do think it's important to point out that this may limit our ability to address unanticipated expenses. If all of a sudden those lines match up identically to what you'd expect, the unexpected might push you in a place where you don't have money budgeted to deal with those uncertainties. And the last one, which I think is really important to point out, given the context that we have overall, is that even with that attempt to limit the budget, to not increase expenses, there was still going to be a really substantial impact across our 4 towns on the bottom line of our taxes. And as a result, the board has authorized the use of a little over $1 million in unspent audited 2025 funds. So these were funds that were previously approved by the electorate in the FY25 budget. They've now made it through the full audit. And we can apply those to FY27 as a way to reduce the tax impact that this budget would have. We also authorized through a vote of the school board the ability for the administration to spend up to about $320,000 from our education reserve funds. Just to put that into context, that's about 46% of the current education reserve fund. So while this will absolutely help with the tax impact of FY27, I think this ties into the third point on the slide before about the FY27 budget buying us time to really think about where we're going in the future, because we may not have $1.3 million or so that we could apply to FY28 in the same way, and those tax impacts would be felt really acutely. After we went through all of those steps, that gave rise to what you saw on the budget flyer, which is a proposed education spending budget, which is now our total expenses minus our anticipated revenue of $29 million and some change. And to put that into context, that's about a 2.6% increase as compared to last year's budget, probably in line or lower than sort of CPI or our inflationary rates, if that is a useful way of thinking about that. Then the real question becomes, okay, now you as a district, as a local district has decided this is your educational spending. How does that ultimately impact tax across the 4 towns? That educational spending value is then apportioned based on our weighted pupil count. So take the total number of pupils, factor in a variety of considerations that certain students might cost more to educate than others, according to our state formula. And what you get is a spending per pupil, which is just our education spending divided by that weighted pupil count. Here again, it's worth pointing out that, as has been the case in the recent years, we are observing a decrease in our weighted pupil count here of about 15 students in this sort of 1900 weighted pupil count. When you take that new weighted pupil count and the new education spending, we're proposing a budget that's about $15,132, which is a now 3.45% increase in spending per weighted pupil as compared to the previous year. That's what we have control over. At this point, the impact on the tax largely becomes dependent on statewide factors. So I want to point out 2 really important considerations here. The first is whether there'll be money allocated by Montpelier to offset the education fund, I suppose it is. We are projecting, based on some data coming out of Montpelier and some modeling that they provided, that at least $75 million will be applied in one-time funds. So the impacts on your taxes that you saw on the flyer and that you'll see here today are assuming that these one-time funds, which haven't been authorized yet by Montpelier, will in fact be authorized. Should they not authorize that $75 million in one-time spending, the tax impact will be more. Should they authorize more, as they did this year? I think it was 129, give or take. Maybe don't quote me on that, but I think that's the ballpark of what it was this year. If they authorize more than the $75 million, the impact on each of our 4 towns will be less than what's projected in this presentation and on the flyer. We thought it was a reasonable baseline to go with the 75 million, which was the latest modeling out of Montpelier. The other impact that is somewhat out of our control is the effect of the common level of appraisal, which will vary by town by town. When we take all that into account, we can see, Patrick, thank you, our current projections, which again are identical to what you saw in the budget flyer. What we're projecting with this proposed budget is a slight decrease in the tax rate and the overall cost per $100,000 for residents of Bristol, a slight increase for the residents of New Haven, and a more substantial increase for both Moncton and Starksboro. Again, that variation is down solely to the variation in the common level of appraisal that comes out of Montpelier for each of these 4 towns. Maybe to put that in perspective, when you look at the tax rate before the CLA is applied, so this really takes into account our spending per pupil and the overall yield projected from Montpelier, we're actually projecting that all towns would actually see a decrease in that base level of tax rate, a decrease of about 3.8%. But after you apply the CLA, that's where the ultimate impact occurs on your taxes. It's also worth pointing out that those projections that we see in that table are all for individuals who are paying taxes based on their property value. A substantial number of our residents pay educational taxes based on their income. And so we have a projection that if you're a household that does pay based on income, for the median household income, we're projecting a decrease of about 12.1% or a savings of about $290 per year. Yeah, please.
Is it okay to ask questions then?
I'm happy to take them, yes.
So, but first is a comment on this screen and also on the flyer that you sent out. Roughly 25% of the real estate is devoted to the penny rate. The property tax rate according to the cost per acre, whatever. And only, it's estimated that a third of our taxpayers pay by that figure. Conversely, there's 2 lines in fine print here, and also 2 lines on the flyer that indicate the impact on people who pay by income, which is relative, which could be estimated to be about 2/3 of our residents. Seems to me that you have the real estate on the flyer and on this screen backwards. We ought to be spending 25% of the space on the flyer, devoting that to the impact on people who pay by income. As you can see on this bottom line, it's quite good for people who pay by income. So 2/3 of our taxpayers in this district are going to see a 12.1% decrease in their school tax.
Yeah,
I think most people are not aware of that. Who reads the bottom 2 lines in fine print, right? That's the whole projection, the whole discussion is based on the penny rate. And I would add, it's notable that Moncton and Starksboro have, even after the CLA is applied, have the lowest tax rate in the district. Sure.
All right, I appreciate that feedback, and I think it does make sense that when we think about the overall impact of this budget, right, that it might actually be, that this might not reflect the majority of individuals' experiences in the way that it could. Right, I think the historical bias of thinking about property taxes largely funding education reflects this approach. But perhaps in today's day and age, with, as you point out, 2/3 of individuals paying largely based on income rather than property tax, that might not actually reflect the challenge. So I think it's something we can incorporate going forward. I appreciate that. Awesome. So that gets us to this take-home message, right? The hope is that by being thoughtful about what we've been doing in the past, by trying to buy time with some of these one-time funds, that we're able to continue this balance of education and support for students and support for our teachers and support for our staff, while trying to mitigate some of the impacts on our community's taxes. And that's how we end up with a FY27 budget that looks somewhat similar to last year in terms of where the money is allocated, but has these consequences for our bottom line. That's, I think, what I have for a kind of summary of what we've done. And the process, hopefully, that's got us to this place. I'll point out, we have lots of materials on the MASD website and our community resource website too, that give lots more detail of that. So just as you saw the sort of breakdown of where spending is occurring for FY26, we have the equivalent of that for FY27. So that's available online. The line-by-line budget that is used to propagate or to create those resources is also available. So if instead of 18 categories, you want a couple hundred probably in that case, that additional level of detail about both our current budget and the proposed FY27 is available. And we're always happy to entertain questions as a school board and try to help clarify as best we can.
Thanks.
Nice one.
Any questions?
I have a question. This is Dave Rousseau again out of Starksboro, and I get it. We still have the lowest rate, but that's a huge increase for Starksboro for anybody living here who has to pay by property value. So, I get it. It's still low, but that's a lot to go up in 1 year. So, just wanted to make my complaint on that one.
Yeah, I think that we appreciate that, David, and I think that was one of the things that we were trying to do with using one-time funds was to hopefully mitigate that to some degree. And I recognize that in the end, it's still a substantive increase. I think we had trouble understanding where we could cut further. Or find other funds to offset that, to mitigate that further. I think that was the tightrope that we were trying to walk.
I understand, and being a rural area out here, we are heavily relied upon higher level funds, and we're all down here at the user level, and all the other political games going on up north are coming down here and affecting us all down at this level. So I appreciate what you guys have been doing. We just gotta get after those at the state and the federal level.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, then. Moving on to Article 8. To transact any other business which may legally come before this meeting. We have to move that to the floor. Me,
Sure, so moved.
for a second.
Second. Never, yeah.
Is there any other business?
I am not going to offer the motion that I would like to move because I think it's not appropriate with regard to Robert's rules of order.
You'd be correct. Anyone else? Okay. We are down to our last, Article 9 to adjourn the meeting until 7 AM, March 3rd, 2026, when voting by Australian ballot shall commence. Have a motion? So moved. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any nays, any abstentions? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you all for showing up and for your comments.
Recording stopped.
Yes. You guys need to get up and move for a minute.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Chance, Claire. Hey, this is another point of concern. Exactly.
Let's go, Chris.
I know it's a preservation of people watching it for some reason. This is all.
Is it?
Thanks for
You can share information.
I'm sorry. I get to you.